Hello, David McMillan here, and I'm introducing the third of the long-form interviews with Shaun Attwood from his channel. And of course they're still there, but I'm putting them all together on mine just to annoy him, but also as a little service for you. Now, in the third one, where have we got to? Well, I guess it's really leading up to after the long prison sentence in Australia. After all, I'd been very successful in the criminal sense with my courier network, made a lot of money, had the big arrest, had it all taken away from me, and I ended up in the Thai prison. Now, in the first half of the 2 hours of this interview, I go into quite some detail on not just surviving in a Thai prison, but how the damn thing works. You can think of a place that's, sure, a huge prison of 12,000 people, but really it's a city within a city, and it's got its own economy and its own peculiarities, including its own kind of currency system within the first part of the prison that I went to, which was called The Cure. It was supposedly for drug cases, drug addicts. Well, nobody in there was really an addict, but if they were on a drug case, that's where they went. And they didn't allow actual money. Of course, they don't allow money there anyway. But in the proper part of the prison, where people are serving their sentences instead of being on remand, there's cash all over the place, and they even have a little bank. But in the Cure, you had to use a substitute currency. And I just mention this now because it's such an odd thing. You needed something you could use as a currency that was legal to have around, but couldn't be forged. It had to have some kind of intrinsic value. What they used was aspirin sachets called tum chai, which I think means strong heart. And they were wadded up to, they're worth about, they trade for 1 baht each little sachet. You could buy them from the prison canteen shop for, I think 100 baht would get you 160 of them in a box. So in a sense you were ahead there in the game. And, well, what did they do with the little packets of tum chai that were worn out? Well, you'll see when I get into the economics of the Thai prison system. And why bother with that? Because it's actually quite a good mirror reflection of the economic systems of the world. Strange, but everything was strange in that prison. From betting on the outcome of the disease-ridden people to visiting hospitals where they actually have an operating theatre in the sense that you buy tickets to watch botched operations. There's some good interesting stuff in this, which is part 3 and the first hour. Oh, why am I wearing a hat? I can't be bothered combing my hair tonight, so, this is as civilized as I'll get. Okay, I'm going to come back to you after a little while, and then, well, at a natural break in about 1 hour's time. So enjoy it. I'll see you in a bit.
Right. You guys have voted David McMillan's interviews as the highest rated thing on my YouTube channel right now. Almost 100% approval rating. Here we are. He's kindly come back again for you guys. I put on my royal bluest suit to complement his posh Shakespearean accent. And we are on part 3 of the whole series. Looks like we could potentially get to 10 parts at this rate, but people are loving it. So let me just recap before I hand it over to David. Part 1, David was in Australian Supermax for almost a decade. His story spans 5 continents, started out in Australia. He's running an operation with the Thai drug lord, the uncle, and his nephew, Tommy. He's also got dealings with the Colombians. So you got cocaine here, we've got gems, we've got heroin. David does his stretch in Australian prison, The police are on his case as soon as he gets out. David goes off to Thailand, and he is framed now for a package that's found at the airport on a day David is at the airport. The Australian police know if they can get him in prison in Thailand for a certain amount of drugs, David will be getting the death penalty. Also, before I hand it over to David, in the last video, in part 2 of the Thai stuff, I mentioned that David would be more motivated to post videos on his own YouTube channel if we helped him get his subs up from 0 to 500 by the end of the year. I think it was at 500 by the end of the day. So I thank everybody out there on YouTube who subbed over to David's channel. In the description box below this video is going to be a link to David's channel, so please continue to sub. There's going to be links to David's books, Unforgiving Destiny, which I'm back onto now because I've just finished Escape. Escape is all the Thailand one. This one is more general his story. So highly recommend you clicking over to Amazon worldwide to get Escape and to get Unforgiving Destiny. And we're also trying to put pressure on David to do the audiobook versions of these in his own wonderful voice.
In fact, I will, Shaun. Good evening, and you look well in that suit. I don't think it's too flash. I don't know why, but a very old expression came to mind. A pox doctor's clerk, as in dressed as. Now, nobody would know what that means these days, but when somebody had a disease and they had to go to an embarrassing kind of medical procedure, the clerk in those offices, the receptionist, was always a man, naturally, and he dressed to the nines. But it looks nothing like that. I have no idea why that popped into my mind. What it
is, I was accused once of only wearing a black shirt. They were said, all you ever have is a black shirt on. Is that all you've got in your wardrobe? So now, to prove these guys wrong, I'm trying to wear a different suit for every single podcast. And we're at podcast 21. So I've managed to wear a different suit on every single podcast. I think I can take it to 30. But unfortunately, I've had to go back to some suits I've never worn before.
That's okay. We'll call Elton John and he might help you out with that.
What about Liberace?
Yes. Tell you what, they could be haunted, some of those old suits. He was an entertainer.
Love the movie.
Certainly. Right. I should say, though, that in Unforgiving Destiny, the Thai escape is dealt with and has a solid chapter to it, with a few things that weren't even in the more detailed escape book. But I'll put shameless plugs aside for a moment and just overlay your well-rounded description of where we got to and how things came about.
Go for it.
By saying that my misadventures since really the age of 18 when I first set out to travel the world were some successes, but some massive failures and crashes, including, of course, the big arrest in Australia, the 6-month trial, 10 years in prison. But the real point to it, I guess, is that every time I think I have a sense of freedom, I don't. One kind of agency, authority, or another is already investigating me and following me around at every point. Certainly, when I was released after the 10 years in Australia, and no matter how many precautions I took, things seemed to go wrong. The point of going to Thailand was really a stop-off on my way to a new life in Europe and back to London. And despite elaborate precautions with passports and leaving false trails, that collapsed too. And I found myself being pursued from the airport as I tried to leave Bangkok. Even that getaway from the airport failed as I walked into a travel agency about 2 hours later and then was arrested. Not, as some people might think, oh, well, you're on the run, don't go to a travel agency. It was people I knew and their telephone lines to all my contacts there, or most of them, had been on a live tap. That is, in this case, the American DEA were listening in, not because I was doing anything very exciting, but they like to test their equipment. And as a few police agencies have said, this McMillan, he fights back a bit. So he'll try and distract you. So it's good training material. He might slip through. So that's what I became.
Was there a specific DEA agent who was coordinating this?
It seemed not in the beginning, but there was a guy who was in early on the big trial. That was Bill Schenkman, and he appeared to give some wild report about how things were done in northern Thailand, the Golden Triangle, and it wasn't even evidence directed at me, actually. It was directed at, out of the 4 people in the case, one was a hippie, and he was acquitted. He didn't even realize that. We had to push him out of the court. But that was Bill's first appearance, and then he kept appearing over the years, nearly at all my international arrests. He certainly appeared in Bangkok, just to have a gloat. But here's the point. The police agencies, the Australians and the Americans, and I guess the British too, had no real interest in me after that arrest took place. So, of course, they suggested to the Thais, do the worst you can for him. And they did. You said framed for the drug charge there. It was, I think, less than 100 grams. Certainly enough for the death penalty, but probably, and I'm almost sure, taken from the daily airport sweep. A lot of people, when they travel with little smuggling runs, they get cold feet and throw their stuff on the ground. Probably the cleaners at the airport have quite a good time after they've done their job, I would think. But not that day, because some anti-narcotics force people were having a little hand pick from a sweet selection. Oh, yes, we'll give David that one. What's that? Nope. Not deadly enough? No. Anyway, I'd been, as you said, I'd been through the very long imprisonment. My wife had been killed in a prison fire. I'd been followed around. Everything I touched seemed poisonous. I'd fled, then crashed twice, got away from the airport and then again, and found myself in Bangkok's biggest prison, Klong Prem, which held then, I think, about 8,000 people in 10 subdivision prisons, including a women's prison and a kind of, a nut house they had in there, as well as the Ladyboy building. They kept them in their own section there.
That's one of the questions you're getting asked now about the Ladyboys, but we covered that in the last video, didn't we?
Yes, and they actually, I didn't mention that they have tents in their building, and it sort of looks like battlefield campaign tents, and I guess it was really. You certainly risk injury going in there. The AIDS epidemic was in full flight back then. People dropping all over the place. So as we left it last time, where was I? That's right. I'd been in what they call the Cure, which was the drug section of that big prison, and realized that it would not be practical to try and get out of that place. And as I'd said, I was just coming out of the deepest depression, where I'd only just abandoned wanting to kill myself. It sounds pathetic to say, well, things didn't work out, so I'll top myself. But it was such a feeling that I couldn't succeed no matter what precautions I took, as though destiny was just toying with me. What is the old saying from the Romans? Those whom the gods wish to destroy first drive mad. and that seemed to apply. Any thoughts of escape were to actually jump the wall, go to a tall building, and then throw myself off. But I was actually saved from that pit of despair by somebody, a Bostonian, an American, who was conning me, and I had a pretty good sense, Shaun, that he was doing so. But it gave me one thing, despite all the losses that he inflicted, it was hope. And I think you said last time we spoke that hopes keep people alive. And you must have come across that in the serious cases in the US when you were there.
Yeah, when I was facing 200 years, I lost all hope and I was just going to slash my wrists and bleed out. But when
Takes
I
a
got,
long time.
Yeah, when I got the plea bargain got reduced to 9.5 years, that was like the happiest day of my life getting sentenced because
What, 9.5 years?
I could
was
see
it?
I was going to get out. I had hope
Really?
back then to get a life back.
What did 9.5 years mean in actual jail time?
I'd served 26 months fighting my case as a first-time non-violent drug offender and a foreign national with a loophole lawyer that the New Mexican Mafia had referred to me. I managed to get out after just under 6 years.
Right.
I just felt lucky compared to what I'd done.
It's still quite a sentence.
Well, the guys I was writing about on my blog on the internet back then, John's Jail Journal, they were all serving decades. They looked at me as a little visitor through their world.
I do know what you mean. I was at some prison years ago, and it was a B category prison, but there were people doing, life sentences, and found myself in the food line, and they're going, just past conversation, and I was going, I'd be there for a few months. I'd say, doing long? 35 rec. Now that means the recommended time inside before release was 35 years. It's a bit of a conversation killer before you pick up your peas and mash. What do you say? Well, think of all the time off for good behaviour.
Where I was at, you'd say how long you're doing, and they'd just say all day. Never getting out.
Yeah. In Australia, they used to say one with the lot, and they'd call that a hamburger, which meant a life sentence.
Wow.
Because you've got everything. The lot. Yeah.
I love prison slang.
Yeah. There used to be a lot for 6 months was a Zach because it was sixpence, and a brick was 10 years, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah. Anyway, we digress, and kick me every time I wandered down a different
I love your
footpath.
digressions.
Oh, it was called a brick, by the way, because a £10 note was brick coloured.
Ah.
Yeah. I wrote a story once called A Brick and Beyond. Right, so here we are, back in Bangkok, and I turn my thoughts to escape, which are never far from it. I've paid a little money to go over to the main part of the Bangkok prison where sentenced prisoners live. So it's going to be better. Not so many people going to court, and it's organised. It certainly was, despite having paid to get there. When Swiss Freddie and we went on the same day, he was in there for a couple of kilos. He was doing a run for some Pakistani guys. They gave him a bad passport. Didn't turn out well. We arrived there, and they gave the standard treatment to new arrivals. It was a way, of course, to get you to start paying. All of the new arrivals were shoved into a cell about the size of somebody's living room. It had one fan that limped along, ground away slowly at night. But with 35 people in the room, you couldn't avoid having somebody's feet in your face. People were sweating, uncomfortable. You couldn't take all your junk in there, your clothes. They were all stacked outside of the place. We spent our time, Freddie and I, killing blood-sucking bugs as they crawled back up the wall. And you could see a line across the wall that just turned sort of brownish red from all the years of bugs there. People were coughing up extraordinary things, Their lungs were a factory of slime. Anyway, that worked, and the trustee that welcomed us to the place met us the next morning. "Hi, guys." "Good night." "No, you rat. Get over here." "All right, how much is it going to cost to get a better cell?" "Well," and then he went on to a big speech. He had lots to sell, this guy. The radios that were confiscated could be bought back. Access to your clothes could be bought. But arranging a cell, I rushed into it a little. It's always better to hold back on these things, as you probably know. Even in a vaguely civilized jail, probably the Arizona one, you know how it is. You don't push yourself forward until you assess everything.
Get the lay of the land and find out who's who before you make your move.
Exactly. You could be paying the wrong person. Now, this was a big sub-prison, this. 6 buildings, each with about 1,000 inside them. Traditional layout, 3 stories high. Very large grounds. It had 6 or 7 large factories. Everybody was supposed to work, doing something. They made army boots. They did these shell paintings that were actually polished bits of shell made into images of King Rama IV, who was very popular. Sold for a lot of money outside, about $100, $150. Poor prisoners got next to nothing, of course. Some of the factory bosses used to had the unprofitable factory, because in the system, the building chief would sell the factories to the prison guards. The prison guards would pay, knowing that whatever was being made there, he could scam. He could get the prisoners to make outside goods for him to sell on to his friends. So the prison boss would say to the guard, "Okay, you now owe me, 5,000 baht a week, and you've got to get it out." Now, if this guard was punished in a way by having an unprofitable factory, he had to get production up. And it was common practice to beat the laziest prisoner at the end of the day. Now, how do you avoid having a laziest prisoner? You can't. Somebody's going to cop it. So they worked in a frenzy.
You must have read Adam Smith's Wealth of the Nations.
Yes. There were many lessons in economics in that place. I think I referred to The Cure, the previous section of it, having a little aspirin sachet currency because cash wasn't allowed. But in this place, they even had a bank within what they called the coffee shop, but was a general store. It sold food, rice, everything like that. But it also had a little bank section on the side. So if you had money in your account, you wanted 1,000 baht to pay your way around the jail, you could get that for what they call 20%. It was really 25, but...
How do you put money in your account?
Friends and family deposit it in a prison account attached to your name. So it's there. And
if you put a lot of money in that account, are you then a target?
No, the Chinese are quite discreet about who has money in there. They are the ones who want to steal from you, not just anybody.
The 20% that they charge.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
To get your money out
really.
of your inmate account.
And they also, of course, made money on the goods that were sold there. Mostly Thai Chinese were running it. People would even... the misbehaving sons of wealthy Thais would arrange their jail time for them and insist that they get involved in the general store.
Let me just try and clarify this a bit more then. So in America, I had an inmate account, and that was run by the jail, and my family could deposit money with the jail, and I could spend $20, $30 a week on items I could order from the commissary from the inmate store. I couldn't go to a physical shop. There was a piece of paper that had a list of items, and I would tick the items up to a total of $25, $30, and then they would get delivered to my cell.
What, bagged up and
bagged
already?
Up.
Yeah.
Now, from what you're saying, this is an inmate account run by prisoners.
The prisoners ran everything in that
So
prison.
your people outside of the prison are giving money to prisoners to give to you minus 20%.
Sometimes like that, but no, it went into the official account.
Oh,
They
so
had,
it was actually deposited
yes.
with the authorities.
Supposedly for buying things that didn't exist, like services, buying sports equipment, none of which happened. But that was the excuse for the existence of those accounts. Also, the foreigners had a special concession so they could buy foreign food. There was even some of the food came as foreign food.
So if the money is getting deposited with the prison, the official prison,
Yeah.
how come they're not just giving you 100%? You can't just withdraw 100% from the prison?
Not
And
in cash. You're not supposed to have cash, but you do need cash.
So how have the prisoners worked the system so they can withdraw it themselves, and but only select ones to give to you 80%?
They've made an arrangement with the, what would you call him, the bursar or the money man within the prison staff, so that he gets a certain amount of cash, and then has access to that a big holding account. In fact, it usually turned out that the prison guard in charge of that had gambled most of it away. So he's utterly dependent on deals with the owners of the coffee shop to keep the float going.
Good grief.
This coffee shop also had a little barber's shop next door. You could get a haircut for about 50p. It had a library. And just to let you know how industrious and thoughtful the people who ran it, this library, were, the items that were the most expensive to rent, even overnight, was the pornography. It came, yes, the porn came in a lever arch folder, with hole punched and laminated, of course, Shaun. You can't be giving out pornography to sex-starved guys that's not laminated. Not if you want to keep issuing that stuff.
So the overnight federal funds rate rises 10%, but the rate for porn rises 50% in the Thai prison.
It was an expensive read, yes. So it was quite a business, that. Also, just to get the overall picture of that middle core of the prison, which people can go on Google Maps, look at the city of Bangkok, just to get the scale size. Type in Bangkok Central Prison, and it will focus on a huge square of land, really visible from space. That's how big it was. But I had no idea of what that size was. It was simply big. And though confined to the building, I was able to get around the rest of the prison. So they had their industries. Some of them were clearly very dangerous for the prisoners. There was a factory that did something that created a gold color on a box that was used for Chinese funerals. It came in huge vats called Yellow Moo from China. Lots of skulls and crossbones on it. And at the end of the day, you'd see these poor little workers scurry out, all completely sallow from this stuff on them. As you can imagine, there was a high turnover rate on a health basis for that. There was a cart that came in every morning, and that was loaded with fresh vegetables-ish, meat, and pretty much anything you'd want from the local market. That market was run by the families of the officers who worked in there. So everything had its inflationary value.
It's like the original prison industrial complex.
It was a city within a city. And the officers who worked in there, that was their lives. Most of them lived within half a mile of the prison itself. It was surrounded. I noticed coming back from court that their houses were all around the place, which was beyond the 20-metre moat. It was not without some level of security. In this central core prison where I was, there were prisons outside of that, like the maze in Ireland, I guess, and prisons beyond that. And then on the fringes of it, even the women's prison. A friend of mine there, he was kind of a scientist. He was quite good. He made a telescope to peer into the women's prison. How, you ask? Right. I know people seem to have an interest in the technicalities of these things, but very briefly, the pictures that were made out of shell were coated in epoxy resin to give them a glassy look. He found an old LP record player. He built up the edges of it, ran it at about 45 RPM, and poured in the epoxy resin. That created a spin, which resulted in a parabola, which was ideal for making this telescope.
Wow.
He was also a terrific brewmaster, made a pineapple swill that was, what was the hooch like in Arizona?
I had the shits after it, but perhaps they might have gave me the bottom of the barrel. I'm told there's different gradations, isn't there? If you get the stuff at the top, it's not got all the swill.
Yeah, and not so granular and all of that.
Yes.
It wasn't filtered.
What they did, because it was almost 50 degrees in the summer.
Wow.
120 in Arizona temperature. They just had a big bag with candy, sweets for sugar, bread for yeast, and fruit, oranges and whatever fruit they could get their hands on. So then you'd put it against the wall, because the wall, it's like a concrete oven in these cells.
Okay, that was the baking zone.
Yeah, so that was the temperature. But then you had to periodically burp it, because if you didn't burp the bag, it would explode.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So they got to burp it, and it lets all this smell out, and you got wait till the guard does a run and then burp the bag. But occasionally people would forget and things would explode, and things going on.
And didn't you notice when you went to somebody's cell or area where that was going on, the whole place smelled yeasty, like
yes.
bread being baked?
Yeah, so when guards did security walks, because they were smoking and stuff as well, smoking meth, they would get out like aftershavey things or deodoranty things and waft them around, up some kind of powder and waft them around, but then that was an even bigger clue that something was going on.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's like people burn orange peel to disguise smoking brown heroin in prison.
Yeah,
but it's just an alert that that's what's going on.
They were smoking fruit peel where I was at when they ran out of tobacco.
Really? They haven't banned smoking in U.S. prisons then? Or not at the time you were there?
I believe that since I have been released, that most prisons have banned smoking now, or there's some maybe outdoor areas for some, or some have switched over to e-cigs.
Yes, and I can imagine it made an instant black market in tobacco.
Of course,
well.
yeah.
Like there's nothing like a prohibition to bring out.
To boost the black market.
Even officers who probably wouldn't consider bringing in drugs would think, well, an ounce of tobacco, that's all right.
Nice supplement to the income there, yeah.
In the UK, the worst tobacco, I forget what its real name was, but it was known as fences and hedges because it had big chunks of it. Anyway, let's get back into the Bangkok prison. Inside Dan 6, which was Building 6, as new arrivals, we had to be trained up. And there was Charlie Yao, who was the trainer. He was an English speaker. I guess that's why he was supposedly training the foreigners how to be obedient and learning Thai for turn left, turn right, march. There was none of that. And nobody would pay any attention to poor Charlie. He'd say, "Oh, guys, come on. They're looking at me. Please, turn, do something, anything." But he turned out to be a very good friend, Charlie. And I'll explain that later. But the first order of the day was to arrange a cell that wasn't infested, not so crowded. So who are we? There's me. There's Swiss Freddie. There was English Nick. Who else came in early on? A couple of the Pakistani guys. One of them was a trustee, but a foreigner trustee is somewhat better than the locals, not a complete rat. A rat, but not a complete one. A rat whose boundaries so it's sort of manageable. You couldn't trust old Tanvir with anything very much. But it was a good starter option to populate the cell. One was emptied for us for, I think we paid about £500 altogether. Quickly stripped it, had some lino put down, changed the fan, brought in an old guy who was completely crippled up, but apparently he was the respected carpenter of the place. He couldn't even hammer in a nail straight, but he managed to put up over the hole in the ground toilet a couple of screens, so that became the evening shower. Arranged water buckets. Now, most of the foreigners, the English and the Americans, found little places in one of the factories to hang out all day. And they paid a couple of Thai boys to do their work in the factories for them. I wanted a bit more privacy than that, so I was arranging some space for myself. But the cell was coming together, and I was already starting to look at the idea of escape. Now, Shaun, I knew I had a reliable 18 months, perhaps 2 years, before my case would be concluded. My lawyer had pretty much told me that my defense, the dream, as they call it, would come to nothing.
The dream.
I'd be convicted. He was kind of eccentric lawyer, but I've got to give him credit. He'd stand up and make a claim to the judge that something was inadmissible. For example, one day in court, what was the evidence of the day? You'd appear there every 6 weeks, go on for about 2 hours, and that would be it. But this day's bit of evidence was a newspaper cutting from the Melbourne Sun newspaper, which included the speculations of a couple of policemen as to what I was planning. Oh yes, David was getting his old contacts together, he was building a network, he was using Thailand as a base, that kind of thing. And my lawyer said, well, it's really only a newspaper story. I don't see how it should go in. The judge said, but we've had a translator from the university to come in. She's a professional woman. What are you saying? It's in evidence. So it wasn't looking good for my case. No. Incidentally, that newspaper article was supplied by the Australian Federal Police liaison staff at the embassy. I did complain to the Australian government that for them to be supporting a case which would result in the death penalty was not really sporting, because it was outlawed in Australia, the death penalty. Did it slow them up? Not much. But in your case, it's going to be different. That was the worry, that it was about time to hang a whitey. And it looked like I was going to be the one. So, back to Dan 6, Building 6. The reason I stayed there is because I went to church on Sunday, which gave me an excuse. It wasn't a real church. It gave me an excuse to wander the grounds generally. And I looked at the bars in the other buildings. The so-called Foreigners Building, Building 2, looked like a depressing place to go. It even had little huts built in the yard, the Americans' hut, the English hut. I went over there to visit on some pretext. I had by then befriended trustee Charlie, who escorted me around the prison on some basis or other. So I could have a good look at the bars in each one. The Foreigners Building bars were, well, if we look behind us at these wooden struts, they were as thick as that. There was no cutting through those things on the cells. I guess that's why they put the foreigners in there. So I was staying where I was. These bars were manageable. They were about half as thick as this microphone back end. So still quite big, but at least I thought it could be done. But that wasn't going to be the prime plan. A cutout, a direct jump out of the prison seemed terribly risky. I didn't know where I was in the building. I was surrounded by thousands of people who, if they saw a foreigner running around after hours, that would be it. The trustees all had whistles. They would literally blow that whistle, blow their little hearts out. A damn foreigner. doing what we don't do. I mean, the last people to get out of that place were a couple of half-wits who managed to climb to the wall, got tingled by the electricity, fell into the monastery next door, and dragged along half-injured by the priests, or monks, who did what servants of the Lord usually do, rat you out to the cops at the first opportunity so that you may seek your punishment and become free of heart. Oh, I don't know how they quite justify it, but that's what they do. So, and that was ancient history. Nobody had got anywhere with this. But that was the building to be in, I figured, even though I didn't quite know where I was. I found a place in, which was this factory. It was one of the art factories making the pictures. Quite peaceful, Shaun. I rented myself a bit of back hall, and the guard in charge of that was a complete drunk. He hated his job, hated life. He was my kind of man when it comes to prison guards. So didn't speak a word of English, but I picked up enough Thai to what was to talk about. I'd bring him my private mail to post for me, and he was. I guess he did that when he left the place because they always got there. So he wasn't too drunk, so he didn't know what to do. What did that cost? A packet of cigarettes, and that was the polite thing, the cigarettes. But the money wasn't much.
Is that because if you just mailed it through the prison, they could open it and see your plans?
Yeah. Well, I certainly didn't put them in writing, but I just didn't. I sent one letter to Sharon, my Australian girlfriend, and she said it arrived with pieces cut out and black lines through it. I found out there was a foreigner's prison censor who was a prisoner, and that was his job. And I found him. I said, "What the fuck you think you're doing?" "Oh, that's my job." "Yeah, okay, right." I mean, we're in a place where every job is to the imagination. Everything's a fiction. And so that was the job I got. I bought myself the job of the censor. And during my time there, I don't think I did anything but seal up letters. I certainly never read anything. The only thing that did catch my eye was a reply coupon from a magazine featuring children's clothing. Not extraordinary in itself, necessarily, but the name rang a bell. This Weed. Why did I know him? Yes, because the building chief had been on my case a couple of weeks earlier, saying, Daniel, that was my name in there, Daniel Westlake.
I learned that this week from somebody who was in prison with you called Tom.
That I haven't rung him back. I must do it. The building chief was trying to get me to take this prisoner into my room. I said, "Chief, let me check him out. I can't handle snorers." Which gave me a time to find out that he'd more or less kidnapped. Oh, no, he bought 2 12-year-old girls and 1 9-year-old from the mother and had his wicked way with them and blundered around. I went back to the chief. I said, "Sorry, Chief, look, here's another 1,000 baht for the rebuilding fund." And a pile of rubble in the corner that never gets touched. "Yes, thank you. What's wrong with him? He's just a criminal like you." "Okay." I explained it wouldn't be healthy. The air was bad in my cell and, he'd probably suffocate. So, but when I saw this little card for the child's clothing catalogue as my job as official prison censor, I returned it to him. And I'm not normally known for anything, I hate people who take advantage of any position they might have. But he said something, he kind of winked at me conspiratorially, like, "All boys together, eh?" "Yes. Tell you what, this card is very tasty. Why don't you eat it?" Which, after a little persuasion, he did. It wasn't very big. Probably capped off his lunch. So that was the extent of my interest in my job. But I had this corner office under a thatched hut in the open air, so it wasn't a fancy office, but it was quite big. The crippled carpenter, I employed him, and he had his assistants. I had a head butler called Jet because he was the seventh child. Nong Sam Si Hap Tip Jet. That's how you count in Thai. I cultivated he was the guard in charge of the building so that I could have my morning runs and then go up and have a shower in private. So you weren't allowed in the main building during the day, and nobody was. It was a ghost town up there. Nothing but emptiness and opportunities for checking out the door. So I'd get the trustee to let me into my cell to open it up. But, we got along, so he didn't mind terribly much if I grabbed the keys and let myself in and put them back. Plan one.
Plan one. Uh-oh.
Okay. Court isn't going well as usual. Some of the monstrosity of evidence was going in. The key. Okay. The cell door had gaps in it. It was all bars. Would it be possible to reach around and get that key into the cell door? Maybe, but I'd need a kind of contraption to turn it. And how would I duplicate it? In one of my care packages, I had some wax candles sent, so I melted them down. This was a bit nerve-wracking, grabbing the keys and making the impression. You can't just squash it in there. You've got to heat it up a bit and then cool it down, pluck it out without deforming it at all, and put it back. And after a lot of experimentation, I ended up with the idea that some kind of resin mixed with metal could duplicate this key. I made up a couple of them, corrected them with little filings, and came back from one of my runs to test the thing. I should say I had to come back from that run and have a shower that day anyway, because everybody had little stalls outside, and one of them was a famous blind man. He wasn't blind, he had 20/20 vision, but he had tailor-made rags to do his begging. So he'd sell his bits of cigarettes to people, and had a couple of guys who had a little rolling machine. And that was his living. He had a towel every day. But during my run, I'd speed past him, and he didn't really like it. Now, he had spectacular lung disease and used to hock out these massive greenies everywhere. And I mention this only because following one run in the morning, I sped past him, and he was at the fence, those cloudy eyes staring out into nowhere. I think his sentence was forever, or they'd lost his papers or something. Anyway, on my second round, I didn't see in time that hideous mouth with the curled lips was open. The roaring thunder of his chest was coming out, and this hot spit tumbled through the air, growing arms and legs, little eyes I'm sure I saw, and then thwump into my T-shirt. And it was clawing at me, so I tore that off and threw it into a rubbish bin, which was descended on by 5 prisoners by that stage. And then ran back into the building. It was hard to get in that day because they were punishing some prisoners for some indiscretion by making them roll up and down on the concrete. You can imagine they're like logs all lined up, and the trustees hitting them with sticks, saying, "No, roll up and down, roll up and down." So I've jumped over them, paid my respects to the guard on the door, run upstairs and produced this key that I've made. Okay, so will it turn altogether? I already know the idea of turning a key from behind will work because I put the real one inside, threaded a stick through it, and turned it. But it needed more force if you weren't standing in front of it. I put this key in, the one I'd made, turned it, it inched, I felt something move inside the works, and then crack. If I let that crack inside, then they'd know, wouldn't they? A lock's been interfered with. it would roll down with ramifications. No, this was, I can't stress enough that they didn't mind you racketeering, selling drugs, killing each other, but anything to do with escapes, taking away your livelihood. People have said, oh, look, this is Thailand, surely you can buy your way out. And I don't know why people say that. They think it's a corrupt country. For example, imagine in your situation in Arizona, how would you start to buy your way out? Could it be done?
Yeah, you got to have a lot of money, though. There was a guy who, his dad was a multimillionaire, and he bought the judge, and he was so confident that his case was going to go in his favor. He really liked his cellmate, and he said to his cellmate, look, call the prosecutor and tell her I've told you these certain things so you can get out on your case as well, because I'm going to get out on my case anyway because we've bought the judge off. So his cellmate contacted the prosecutor and became an informant and was moved to a different prison, all this stuff, and was ready to testify against him. But because the judge had been bought out, it all got kicked out anyway. So both of them got out,
wow.
Him and his cellmate.
But what do you think all that cost?
Oh, lots. You've got to have millions.
I would
in
think.
America, yeah. In America, you get what justice you can afford. So if you've got millions, you can play the system. Like OJ, you're down the road, kick down the right amount of money to the judge and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think ultimately that one was down to a jury, wasn't it? And what was that famous lawyer he had? Was it? He was one of the Kardashians' friends.
Yeah.
I'll think of it in a minute. But he played the race card very well.
Yeah.
And fortunately for the defense, one of the policemen had blundered by making some unfortunate remarks about race and fitting people up.
The Nazi cop, yeah.
So and I'm not sure that would work in today.
But down the road, he got rearrested, OJ.
That's right, and
he's back out again now, isn't he?
Didn't he get arrested in some hotel for pulling some scam?
Yeah, he said people who took his memorabilia, and he went and retrieved it at gunpoint. So he got...
That's one way, yes.
He got like kidnapping and armed robbery and everything, but I think he's back out again now.
Yeah, he's out.
Yeah. So obviously some money changed hands somewhere for him to get back out, I believe.
Yes, but there we are. As you say, a very expensive thing.
Oh,
and, in Thailand, to buy your way out, I'm sure in normal circumstances, it could be done in most cases. But I should say this, there were eyes on my case. I was a foreigner. Pretty much everybody connected with it was going to send me down. For the judge to reverse all of that, and the difficulty really is probably not how much it would have cost or whether it could be done. There was no way to find anybody who could approach him that wouldn't pocket the money first.
Because didn't you lose 50 grand on an attempt to do that? Because what I read in Escape, I mean, you were in a fortunate position to have this amount of money anyway, but there were certain escapes that you invested in and they just took your money.
Oh, virtually all of them. The Bostonian made some attempt when he contacted my old friend there, Lee, to get a doctor to make up some medical basis for bail, to contact the prosecutor. But there were so many layers to go through. They were too busy stealing the money. And anyway, he didn't want to spend much of it. He had his own plans for that money. But as I said before, his only real... I found him in the end years later. And I said, well, a lot of people would think that having fleeced my friends for over 100 grand and make me think that you make some real attempt to get me out, that I'd be very upset with that. But you can relax a bit because I did get something for that money. I got hope when I needed it most. He said to me early on, look, you don't belong in this place. You don't look like you do. Which I didn't take to mean and I was different from anybody else or somehow not deserving. None of that. Just almost like it was a reading of fate.
Didn't Danny Dyer say that to you?
Yes, when he could focus clearly enough. Lucky his palms didn't sweat, or he wouldn't have had a question to answer me, because he scribbled them out on his. But I kind of liked him. He was while we were doing that bit, he was sweating over the release of some horror movie that had come out, and Danny was ringing his agent every 5 minutes, saying, "What? The opening? What do you mean there's nobody in the theatre? Well, go get somebody, you know." It bombed first weekend.
So he wasn't really scared of you on that boat then. He was just channeling that energy about the movie.
He was. He was scared of professional failure. His favourite line was to try and take that false modesty of kind of running himself down. Just a Ponzi act to me. Good player. Gay aristocrat, I think. I could do that. Yeah. But I can't really see him being a Lord Fauntleroy, can you? No, he do it well. He do it well. Yeah, got a photo somewhere, you know, telling me to keep out of trouble.
I like the bit where you disappeared. Was that in Soho?
That was pretty much staged. Yeah. The whole thing, it was the weakest attempt to look like, I was worried about my safety and on the run. It was feeble, but the whole thing was done on about 50 grand, 22 of which went to Denny, and everybody else. Yeah. Everybody else had to make do. The cameraman was director one day, and the director was everything, you know.
Oh,
Clapper-loader, as they used to call it.
Wow.
So, yeah. Well, we're about 1 hour into the 2-hour interview with Shaun, and it's the third one I did with him. And, well, I'm getting into the swing of it, and Shaun is actually, I think this was the first appearance of his blue suit, which later became the famous Pox Doctor's Clerk suit. He still has it, still wears it, and somehow I think he quite likes the idea of being called something that refers to a snappy, over-spruced, but efficient waiting room attendant. Yeah, there's got to be some background into that. Now, we just left off speaking about Danny Dyer, and this was from the filming with him of Danny Dyer's Deadliest Men. It does surface every so often on the lesser free-to-air channels, and you'll hear me talk about the program there. Because Danny's moved on to bigger things since then. He's done well for himself. You know, he's just about more royal than British royals. But anyway, we actually get into the escape itself. Finally, you know, after two 2-hour interviews and halfway through the third one, the escape begins. And, of course, you know, I've been through something like 20 other schemes, and they've been abandoned. And they had to be, because they relied on other people. And you can't have that. It doesn't work. Anyway, enjoy the next hour, and I'll see you after that. As they used to call it.
Wow.
So, I knew I'd get swindled on that one. No mention of the book I was trying to promote. So, anyway.
Danny, you fucked up, mate.
Yeah, done that. I would have been in your corner today. And you never know when you might need a lowlife like me. You never know. Okay, where are we? Okay, back in the key plan, abandoned. It would have, can you imagine the risk? I've only opened one door. Where am I going from there? All right, let's look at the courts. Plan 2. Get out of the courtroom. Modern building, paid for by American DEA money. High rise, a lot of floors unoccupied, good thing. The trial courts on the upper levels. Prisoners arrive, herded off the vans, all in chains. Even I couldn't get out of being chained for the court day. You go down there, use a machine, or the guy with a hammer to put them on, put a bit of string on it and shuffle off. Had to wear a little uniform, prison uniform for the court. Had a tailor make one up out of silk, so it wasn't too sweaty.
Not this colour.
No, even I wouldn't have gone that far. But still, no, actually that would have been has a tone of innocence, don't you think? The Thai prison court suit or prison clothes is a kind of shit brown from not very good meal, I think.
No royal blue.
No, the prisoners didn't wear them much, except for the extremely poor ones who had to eat prison food, which was at a bench with brown rife, rife with weasels in it, and but as my scientist friend there said, full of protein, all that, and a quarter of a mouldy cucumber. Oh, and they had to pray before they ate that meal. In other words, sit at the table at this, well, I'd like to say steaming pile, but if there was any heat in that rice, it was only from the fermentation going on. And then they'd get shuffled off the bench. Somebody'd come down, hose off the plates. They were nailed into the bench top.
Who did they pray to?
I think it was a Buddhist prayer of repentance, I dare say. Repentance for having sat at that table at all.
With the weevils.
I tell the story somewhere, and we won't go into it today, we haven't got time, but the one day I did see all of the prisoners in uniform was a kind of open day. Yes, they had them there, and they had special food made for them, saffron rice and a few delicacies. Oh, yes, says the escorting guard to the outsiders. That's what they get every day. In the morning, that same guard had been saying, I want all the cripples off the streets this morning, guys. If you see somebody bleeding, hose it away. Won't have blood on my open day. Oh, no. But and other things like the gay fashion parade, which were held on a makeshift stage inside the eating hall. You know what? I like the lady boys, when they'd get their award for being the best dressed queen, were in tears, and I want to thank all the little people out there. You know, they went through and it was quite popular. There were some musicians in there, a couple of good ones. And okay, everybody speaks of these prisons as being unrelenting torture factories. Indeed, you wouldn't have to go far to find where, on one occasion, the trustees were busy killing off some poor junkie kid that had run afoul of everybody and become an embarrassment and knew too much about the senior officers. And so they were killing him off.
I was reading that in your book, and I was really like, oh, what is going on here? It was one of those moments where you described it.
Well, it was harrowing, because I'm kind of hoping he dies quickly. They'd given him hot shots and everything. But yet at the same time as that's going on, some kind of frolic is being staged elsewhere in the ground. So this massive contrast. They covered up his death easily enough. Blamed it on something or other. So it's very easy to sit here and pile on, you know, grisly stories of, or even really comic ones. But sometimes, if I would interfere with a prison guard torturing some poor slob, he'd send his boys over to say to me, look, Daniel, why? It's Thai business, this. We don't bother you. Don't bother us about that. So that wouldn't be often when I'd intercede. I did do a favor for Charlie Yao's Chinese pals in there by taking in a young boy that was really going to be a target. He was pretty. I mean, this would tempt, you know, absolute testosterone fueled, you know, woman eater into crossing the line. He looked about, you know, 14 years old, looked like a little girl. Oh, so he had a black eye when they brought him to me. you look after him for a week, because if we put him anywhere in any of the other cells, he'll be, fucked all over the place. So I took him in, and that wasn't a real problem. I had to say to little Jet, my manservant, Jet, stop molesting him. He's so cute. Now, I know he's cute, but leave him alone. He likes me. Jet.
And your manservant is a midget.
Yeah, he's only about 4 foot nothing. Robbed a bus, ran in there with 2 guns, waving them about. Perhaps they couldn't see the guns, he's so small. But anyway, somebody relieved him of them. And, I think the bus driver got back to the office with a little Jet under his arm. So this idiot tried to rob the bus. Yeah, they all got a good laugh out of that. But he made for a good butler. He brought me a lot of charity cases, though, I must say. He came up with a couple of people who had been in there so long, their papers had been lost, they never went to court. One of them didn't even seem to know which country he was from. But I said, Jet, he speaks a little Thai, but tell me, is it with a heavy accent? He said, yes, it's, I don't know, foreign accent. Thanks, Jet. And he'd been cast about in the Arab world from one country to another. So there was no jobs left. We had already somebody whose job was to go and fetch the ice, and somebody else. So he became the chimney sweep for the group. No chimneys anywhere, so he wasn't terribly busy. But he got to eat anyway, and that was an important thing.
What a cast. I can see this in the movie, this cast of characters with the midget butler and the chimney sweep. There's no chimneys. It's great.
No. The cooking was done by Noah. Because I've changed the names in the books, it doesn't really matter. None of the names in anything of the people matter at all. But the French group were quite cohesive. Their embassy was good. The food they gave them in little packages was very good. And Noel he was quite a good cook. He could, so that was something to look forward to. Where did this all come from? It came from a big cart. You would pay in cash, another reason you needed it, to the trustee who arranged the food purchases. Okay. So, where was I? The courtroom, trying to get out of it. Yes. Tall building, this was the plan. Prisoners were taken into the courtroom by a special elevator. This lift took them up. It was very small, and only fit 2 guards, perhaps 2 sets of prisoners. But most often, you'd be taken down by yourself. It passed 3 empty floors that had yet to been fitted out as courtrooms, so there was empty space. Idea? I'd find one of my most ruthless, villainous friends, used to waving a gun about, persuasive at all times, to travel to Thailand, see me go in, stop the lift on the way down by just pressing on the empty floor, take care of the guards. They wouldn't argue much, they wouldn't have cared. Leave them taped up with cable ties, hands and feet, a bit of gaffer tape over the mouth to give them something to breathe through. Oh yes, he'd need some bolt cutters which had extensions on them to cut me out, change of clothes, wig, walk down the floor, get into the lift, not that lift to get into the public lifts, join the crowd downstairs. The guy I picked was good, really, loyal, robbed plenty of banks without incident in his time, was such a good shot that he could wing somebody without, leaving any disabling effects. That, by the way, got him killed in the end. You don't fire a shot over the head of a policeman, do you? If you've come to that position, you might as well become Billy the Kid and shoot it out, or not, because the shot that he sends back at you, well, it hit him in the chest. Anyway, at the time, Harry was, he came over and he counted, unfortunately, the number of policemen, prison guards, and others with machine guns and armed to the teeth. And I think he had a little clicker. And he stopped counting at 113 or something. I thought he was worrying about nothing myself. If people have got guns everywhere all the time, doesn't mean, sure, they'll use them if they have an excuse, but we're mingling with the crowd. I suppose he did have a point, though. If something went bad about it, we would have been finished. So it would have made a headline. The last expression of a foreigner. I'd be like, poor old Dirty Harry's victim on the ground. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Okay, it wasn't the greatest of plans, but it was researched, it was checked out. I just couldn't find somebody determined enough. People are very good crooks in their own manner. You can find some very tough people here in the US, but I always found the professional crooks or career criminals that found themselves in Asian prisons were really lost and out of their depth. Nothing worked for them because nobody knew them. They had to there's no way of proving themselves from the outset. A lot of it's really, I'm sure that so many crooks around the world, and certainly applies to the mafia, exist by reputation and what it means. So that plan was abandoned. The court thing's going on. I have escaping from death row, which would follow a conviction. It wouldn't have been easy. So I had a friend there. It was an Italian-American, Alex, a mafia guy. Another story for another time. But he ended up there and he was in massive chains and had to pay just to get a shower every day, a lot of money. So time was against me. I had another couple of plans, but in the back of my mind, I'm always keeping in reserve, this may come to it, David, when you're on your own. Nobody will come with you. I think I had about 2 or 3 Confederates. There was another Swiss guy there. He shared our cell. But the one thing everybody should know about some kind of a hellhole prison, don't get sick. Whatever you do, take care of yourself and don't. Theo, the other Swiss guy, sneezed, well, effectively, I'll put it, he sneezed too strongly one day and burst a blood vessel. Now, that's treatable, but there was nothing we could do. He wouldn't come down from the cell. He was lying there. I had a little pet cat. The cat came and told me, this is serious, David, because he'd peed himself. Now, somebody has to be pretty far gone to do that. And I still remember to this day, of course he wasn't eating, he couldn't talk. The broken vessel was slowly draining blood into the parts of his brain and flooding it, killing off brain cells. It must have been agonizing, because when one eye was starting to go. Can you imagine? One is fixed, glassy stare of a dead man, and the other one is flittering about. Into the good eye, I looked and said, told a pack of lies. Don't worry, Theo, I'll bribe everybody I can find. We'll get something done. And they just didn't want to do anything about it. And to tell me what was going on, which we'd all guessed by then, the one arm that still worked, the other one was obviously on the side. Well, it works reversed, doesn't it, with the brain? He managed to get one arm over the top of his head and just banged it on the side to say, it's in there, it's in there. I'm dying. And, we paid to get him to the hospital. A couple of cartons of cigarettes, sort of that. But that's a death sentence in itself, going to that hospital. He hung on till the next day. And the doctor wrote it up. Died of AIDS. That was the official verdict. So Theo was out of the plan. I was left with a Swedish guy, Sten, been working out, in on a drug case, facing the usual life sentence. But also, a lot of the guys had hope in there. They expected to spend no more than about 8 years before they'd be transferred home. But the whole transfer system which was brought about by the Canadians and the Americans, had a kind of poison pill to it. The transfer system meant that the royal pardons that used to be routinely handed out after, I don't know, a decade or 12 years to foreigners weren't being given out. You had to transfer back to your country. Now, in the case of the US, that meant passing the barrier of getting past the DEA approval, which was cooperation. So you had to rat out a few people or make up a convincing story to get past that. My point is that while escaping was a sensible thing for me to do, it wasn't necessarily so for some of the others. Where would they go? If they got out, would they have passports? Would they have friends? Would they have money? Did I want them with me? Like, no. I don't know if I've told you the story that resulted in... In fact, I have. Yes, I have mentioned when the Israelis turned up, having escaped from a small lockup in the north, and their legs had been smashed with iron bars, broken rocks piled on them, and they'd healed up that way, if you'd call it healing. The legs were all bent and twisted, and they were in heavy elephant chains, they called them. Then, of course, nobody else wanted to come. So,
if you want the full Israeli escape story, that was in part 2, and all of David's parts and David's playlist now are in the description box below this video.
Yes. So alone I was, but as it turns out, that was a good thing. Charlie, meantime, my Laotian Chinese friend, had been released. He'd been deported, but he came back to Thailand, and he came to see me, and I said, look, I need a passport, but there's a few wrinkles to it. I don't know exactly when I'll be going, so when I give you the word, get me the false passport, but it has to be a good one, of course, passable, but you have to enter it into the Bangkok immigration computers at the airport, because the visas were for, 30 days. So if I turn up there, it must look like I've only been in the country for a couple of 3 weeks. So that was another job. And it seemed to me there were many layers to that, getting this photograph into a stolen passport, putting the requisite stamps in there to make it look like I'd come in, getting to the computer. How did all that work? Well, Charlie assured me that the people smuggling network was so standardized by then. There were people in each of these government departments, especially at the airport, who would do all that sort of stuff. But I still had to get out of the prison. I've had another plan where I was to be welded into a VW combi van. I didn't like this one much. Being welded into anything somehow. Yeah, because there was an auto repair shop within Dan 6, Building 6. Staff and friends and family used to bring their cars in, they'd fix them up, send them out. So a special van would come in which had a secret holding spot. I'd be put in that, sealed up. Even if I wasn't welded in, then whoever brought it in was supposed to come in on the Monday and pick it up. So I'd have to time it so I could get into that during the afternoon, and they'd pick it up within an hour or two, and then I'd be driven out. Pretty good plan. One thing wrong with it, you'd have to trust somebody else in the whole city. It's
Buried alive.
I know, and I was just, I'd seen too many betrayals, and the inability to keep secrets. I bet if you come across somebody who can really keep a secret no matter what, you'd always find a place for him in your world, especially if you're up to no good. They almost don't exist. There are a few around. And I'm not going to find anybody like that amongst the desperate and fly-blown of Thai prison.
Was Michael still your guy?
He was still around. In fact, by the time I had settled on a plan, he'd attended, I guess, in London, a wake for me. My friends and family had gathered as the trial was nearing an end to, I guess, toast goodbye to David. Alas, we knew him well, because it looked like okay, probably with various protests and things, the death penalty wouldn't be carried out, but it would still mean no royal pardons, no transfers, and being 20 years in the prison under ever-worsening conditions. Most of them felt they weren't old enough to keep supporting me.
So Sandra Gregory got a royal pardon around then, didn't she?
Yes, the women got theirs a little quicker,
Okay.
generally.
Did you have any interaction with her in the system?
Yeah, oddly enough.
'Cause I work with her. She's one of my colleagues at
Is
public
she?
speaking in schools.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
still around.
Yeah.
Now, her case
She went
was...
to Oxford and everything.
Her case is tied up with a guy called Bob Locke. She was working for Bob. He had a great address book, included people in Japan. You know what they pay for weed over there? Like £20,000 a kilo. God, if I wasn't an honest man, that'd be tempting. Japan. Anyway, I tried to buy Bob's address book off him, of course. Yeah, maybe. I damn well lost it. Anyway, I sidetrack here. Bob had Sandra working for him on a very simple run. A bit of dope, 100 grams or something, was it? Less. Ultimately to Japan. Whatever attracted their attention, she became under suspicion. He was on the flight too. She was taken there for questioning. Did she mention his name? I think several times.
The British authorities turned the Thai authorities onto what was happening.
Yes.
And she was actually, they took him and his girlfriend for questioning, and she hadn't been in the mix yet. And they went up to her and they said to her, "Are you with them?" And she's so honest, she said yes. So they took her as well. Like that. Her life changed like that.
God, if ever you regret having made the wrong answer, that must have been the day for her.
Yes.
What was her book? Forget You Have a
Forget
Daughter.
You Had a Daughter, because she wrote home a letter to her mum saying basically death penalty or life for this. You might as well just forget you had a daughter.
Good line for a book and a tragic thing to receive, I would think.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
So Bob was very panicky over it too, because he was worried that she might actually testify against him. He had one of the few acquittals I've ever seen.
He got out, didn't he?
Under the glare of the BBC cameras. So they had foreigners watching them, I suppose.
Massive publicity, didn't it, that case?
Yeah, they followed almost every appearance. He was... I met up with him afterwards. He was living in, I think, near here somewhere, working at the Phillips factory, doing some kind of dull job. He remembered me, and he knew about it. And he said to his flatmate, I mean, they were broke. They were eating bangers and mash. Now I had to leave out another part of the story, because whatever I say, Shaun, I will not get somebody in trouble. So it's a little bit of a delicate...
We've got to be careful here.
Walking around.
I doubt he'll want to come on the podcast to relive or put it out there.
No, we'd be abusing our storytelling abilities if we actually got somebody carted away.
Yes.
So,
Let's go on with your story.
Yes. But anyway, the point was the flatmate never believed that it had all happened, that I'd got out of there. Like Bob said, yeah, people don't believe it. Anyway, so, but here it was. I was back in there, running out of time, and yet all the time I was in there, I was preparing things for the fact that I might have to go out alone. I was building some things. Because I didn't know the prison, I'd even made a kind of matchstick model under my little office desk of every time I saw something new, I'd add another little part of the building. In fact, when I got and my furniture in my room had been manufactured in a certain way. People didn't have beds; they had little mats, but I had a very low-level bed frame with kind of woven mesh throughout it, and I think a bookcase and a couple of tables and things like that. And Michael helped me by sending me the vital component. I don't know if I've spoken about it before, but he sent me the hacksaw blades.
No, before we only talked about going into the Thai prison and the Israeli escape and the other failed escape by the
Right.
Chinese. We've not done the hacksaw blades.
Now, they were the essential things, and particular hacksaw blades. So I told him how I got care packages, so this would be the way to get them in. But this couldn't be any ordinary care package. The foreigners were given a little bit more leeway. The Thais' clothing was dumped in a bucket of water in case something was dissolved in it. Their bars of soap were cut open, their honey was poked at. Excuse me. But I guess the Thais guards thought that foreigners wouldn't be sending in drugs from a Western country. It's Thailand that sends them out. So they allowed you a bit more. And you didn't get visits or anything like that. So I gave Michael the instructions for these, and
When
he
you say you
carried
gave him
them
the
out.
instructions, how did you do that without getting detected?
I used an ultraviolet pen and wrote it on the back of a letter that I sent out through my guard. So he went into a darkened room, switched on one of those lights that you check forged currency with, and it was all there.
And how did you get an ultraviolet pen in a Thai prison?
Care package. My good friend and accountant, hi Max, was always getting these long and never-ending lists of little things like cable ties and gaffer tape and things that could be mixed in with stationery or for some other purpose. As long as there was plenty in the box, they wouldn't stand out at first. We had an old canning machine, and somebody put a Swiss Army knife into one of the cans and sealed it up and put a Fortnum and Mason's label on it, and that came in that way.
Were you ever worried you were going to run out of money for these projects and eventually get stuck in there with no money?
Well, Leah's the source was dried up. My own money was gone. I was entirely dependent on friends, and this was the big advantage. The only thing really that separates me from being either dead or stuck in some rat hole is that I still had friends. And you know how you keep friends, Shaun. You're good to them and they're good to you. You've got to filter out all the non-starters and deadbeats in this world. And that's not an easy thing to do, but you do get better at it as time goes on. And Michael was always fine. Other people would say to him, why are you going through all of this stuff? He's just passing his time in there asking for all of these things. Nothing will come of it. So anyway, Michael's care package arrived. It was a huge, heavy thing. It was opened up, and I waited till the guard was a bit tired. I let some other people go in front of me. Calvin, the American, was with me that day. I said, "Oh, Dave, you got a big one there." Yeah. Hey, you go first, Calvin, get your thing sorted out. And it was opened up, and out came the usual things: T-shirts, clothes, trainers, cartons of cigarettes, which they'd be checked passed to me, and I'd hand a couple of cartons back to the guards. They thought that was a polite thing to do. Remember, they don't look at it as bribery or corruption. I'm just showing gratitude for them being nice to me. Inside, there was some decorative things, little pictures for the room, including a long scroll that unfolded on dowel rods with a kind of "Go peacefully amid the noise and haste," and written in fine calligraphy, and I recognized Michael's handwriting on that. And that was put aside. Then there were jars and painting brushes and things like that. But apart from the cigarettes being handed over, my key to not being checked very carefully was I asked Michael to find the most filthy pornography he could lay his hands on. He got some from Denmark that was pretty rank. I said no shit eating. I don't mean, Michael, just vaguely within some human bounds, but quite extreme. And the Thai guards are picking these things up and going, Oh, Wesley, no, 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 I mean, no. Under their chair it goes for later checking, just to see quite how illegal it was. But they've had their fine, haven't they? So it was in the poster that the hacksaw blades had been put in. In the dowel rods, top and bottom, which were wood, Michael had put them in a vise and run a radial arm saw up and down to cut a groove into them, bought some tungsten-tipped hacksaws, wrapped them in tinfoil to cover any x-raying thing, put them back in, sealed it up with AB resin-setting putty, sanded it down, repainted it, golded it, topped and tailed it with the little knobs. Now, it sounds interesting and good, but try getting somebody to do that. Imagine, well, if anybody watching this, imagine you're in some shithole someplace. Miserable stories. That's all that ever comes out of there. You're not like, nobody has any hope. You ask somebody to go and do something very specific for you. Go to some expense to do it. Time. Use skills. Have to learn something to do it. Will they do it? Will they do it just because David asked me to? He'd do anything I asked of him. And when I'd spoken to him after all that time, it had been months, I went into an explanation as to what had happened, and he stopped me. He said, David, don't go on to explain. Just tell me what I have to do, how much I need to bring. And that's a friend.
What a guy, between him and the guy getting your passport and the stamps and all that. Good grief. These are like really important parts, aren't they?
Yes. You certainly, the only reason they, either they just liked me anyway, but they also knew that I would go the extra mile for them. And it's really not, it's mostly just a case of agreement. If you come to a friendship with somebody, there comes a point when don't you think, where you think, yep, this is somebody who would go all the way for me, and I'll go all the way for him, or her, as the case may be. I've only known a few women women are very good at being loyal, but often as not, in general terms, their solution to things different.
Men are risk takers more than women, aren't they?
That's right. And women are very hopeful too. So you have children, you've got to be damn hopeful, haven't you? It's always going to turn sour, and yet poor things, they've got to go through all that for nothing. Well, mostly. Anyway, so I've got my hacksaw blades. I've made up the other things, and pretty much then, is anything better going to happen? Because this is risky. My friends had come to see me, and I said, what's the prison look like? Well, I kind of paced it out, and it's sort of like this, and I'd got to the outer wall during one of the big church meetings, which are kind of like a hallelujah chorus. All of the African guys used to have a good old sing-along at these church meetings. You had to shout. It was a big meeting place for all the guys from other buildings, so we'd catch up on the gossip. And of course, one or two of them had nominated themselves as priests in the real world. But I met a lot of supposedly princely Nigerian guys there. The amount of Nigerian princes in Klong Prem was massive. There was a whole network of their business affairs there, but it's quite a long story. It's in one of the books, but they ended up getting tricked badly over a repatriation scheme. So they were all a bit down. So the church singing wasn't so loud that weekend.
These are the ones that the DEA has tricked with the 1 in 4 deal as well, where they were letting so many through, the smugglers through.
That was still going on, though it became so well known, not amongst the poor slobs who were the couriers, that if they took the job, they'd run out of Bangkok to Europe, or often Chicago. Chicago was a big hub for them. And then the fourth load they'd be given was exactly 2.3 kilos. I don't know why. Not particularly good. They'd take one step out of the taxi at the airport and descended upon. they still managed to find a few people, but one of the embassy staff from the U.S. Consulate was getting embarrassed about it. He was just too well known. So they were tangled up in that, but they also had another problem that they thought was a solution. They couldn't get out of that prison because they had no passports. There was no embassy of Nigeria in Bangkok, or I think of Ghana or somewhere else. But they seemed to be saved by that one day when they had a visit from some embassy officials who were setting up a consulate. They'd been based in the Philippines. That was the nearest one, in Manila. And I think it was a work in progress, that new embassy. I think something had been rented, a house and cars arranged, certainly a few flags put up. And they were told that they couldn't get their return home passports. Now, they've really finished their sentences or can get a pardon unless they paid a fee to get the passport. There was something about clearing the photo. There was something about some government fee. All around, it was costing probably about $1,200 to arrange the passports for hundreds of the Nigerians. The Nigerian boss who was feeding and clothing all of these guys in prison, about 700 of them, he said to them, look, I can't pay $1,200 for each of you. Not all were entitled, but at least 100 were. So they sent their families from their hometowns in Africa to do little runs for them. And the guys were saying, well, don't get them arrested on the fourth one. They're only doing one, you know. That'd mean we need more passports, wouldn't it? Yeah. So they paid their fees and they were all getting ready to go. I saw them. They were bright and chirpy on visits. Finally, after 20 years inside, it looks like we're going home. They were going to make their applications now that they had the documents. When's that? Oh, next week. Wasn't it last week? Yeah, it's a little delay, David. It's just, what it's like, bureaucratic. Yeah. Any money involved? Well, of course, we've given them some extra to move it along quickly. About 2 weeks later, there was a story about non-payment of rent for a consular building that was from the Nigerian embassy. Then something about car rental companies wanting their limousines back for the Nigerian embassy. Then somebody from a Japanese legation running into somebody in the Philippines embassy saying, oh, you guys got a Bangkok office now. What? We've got no plans for that. The whole thing was a shell.
Oh, poor guys.
Their fellow countrymen had come and set up a complete non-existent embassy service, got about 100 of them to get this 1,200 together, even at the cost of having their own families doing runs and things like that. Having village fetes back home, it must have been awful. And nothing to it, just fleeced out.
The smugglers got scammed by their own people.
Some people would think they'd be, wise up to that. There's hoping.
Hope
again. Yeah. Hope again.
Greed and fear.
So, how are we on for time at the moment?
Yeah, we could keep going a little bit here, and we're doing an hour and a half. We'll do some questions.
And
we could do these.
Signaling, we're over an hour now, are we?
Yeah, we could finish. I'll do a few questions.
But I really need to finish this thing.
Yeah, keep going.
What are we at?
We're at an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
But we could do the full escape in part 4. After lunch.
I'll get lynched.
After lunch. Create suspense.
Okay, well, we can... No, I'll show mercy on you, all right? And on myself. We'll get to the point. Now, I was triggered we'll get to the point at least.
Okay.
Where I'm at the top of the building.
Okay, great. Let's stop there.
Yeah,
I like that.
Okay. Because it's not without its complications, as is anything. Okay.
We're on the hacksaw right now. The hacksaw's just been delivered.
Yes, and I think that was the last element. I get word that from my lawyer, looking very sheepish and sad, David, your trial's coming to an end. In a good way? Not necessarily. I think that's the Asian way of saying
the dream is over.
Yeah. Indeed. It was going to be finished off. I would be convicted, given the death penalty. Whether that would be carried out or not depended on if some government official from either Britain or Australia making very strong representations. But in any event, I would be at Buncon Prison, downtown, across the road. I'd have to start the whole thing again, and I'd be in heavy, heavy chains. Because they'd look into my background a bit more. I'm sure the Australians would have said something about the helicopter escape and all. Anyway.
Part one.
So I had about 3 weeks to go. And Charlie, I said, okay, get that passport organised. How? Okay, where to put it? Okay. Have you got a friend in town with a flat? Yes. Okay. Put it somewhere there. He came back and he told me, David, I put it behind the mirror in the toilet cubicle in the flat. Here's a copy of the key. I've arranged with the trustee for you to have that key. And trustee gives it to me. I have it sealed in a little tag. The reason I do that is because I don't want to fail in this attempt, be tortured, and have to answer, what is this key to? No, we checked out that, you bastard. It wasn't that. Whack, 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 whack. I didn't really fancy all of that if things went wrong. So I'm thinking ahead to what if things go wrong, because it wasn't good. A new guard comes onto the wing. He's taken to sleeping downstairs outside my window. And he's having the little artist guy draw pictures of pistols and things. He's a gun freak. Well, that's maybe not a bad thing. At least I've got a gun to take off him. But what good is a gun going to do me? We'll know in a minute. Okay. Everybody had backed out of the scheme. There was only, I think, the Hawaiian American in there, Jet, my servant. Mirage, the people smuggler. He was in a corner. And myself. Oh, and the Viking. Big, strong Sten. Nobody's going to be in it. Sten said, look, I'll help you on the night. I hope you cut out, but that's it. I've paid a lot of money to have the only light switch in the whole of that prison. Months earlier. Just can't sleep, boss. Oh, it's very illegal, a light switch. Very, thank you. All right, it'll be in by midnight. So, well, it wasn't really like, he had to go and organise it, so I had that done. I had the crippled carpenter put it up. I didn't have, running against the clock, a strange thing triggered me. And one of the, I don't even know what he did. He was one of the servants. He came, you're going to court today. I've made you, he made a little wicker man out of special stones and things and blessed it and prayed over it. You're being sentenced today. I'm not even going to court, but that was the night I was going, and he came to me. Yeah, spooky. Okay, those are the people in the cell. I said to Sten, I think it's tonight. The sleeping guard is not down there tonight. I don't know when he's going to be back. I'd moved one locker from the umbrella factory where I was supposed to be employed into my office. I knew I'd be so pressed for time, Shaun, when I got out of there, because bars cutting's a difficult thing, that I left the padlocks undone on my lockers downstairs, so I wouldn't have the additional time and the noise of taking out a key and unlocking them. Really. 1:45, it's quiet around the place. Quiet enough. Turn the light off. Bedtime, guys. Seems a bit early. Next thing, Hawaiian American wakes up. I've taken, days before, I'd taken the hacksaw blade out of the scroll. So they're hidden in the shower screen by then. All the other furniture has a part to play in what happens next. Sten got up and got ready. A little table unfolded to become a series of stairs leading to the window, which was about 8 feet high. So you couldn't stand on it and hack away. You needed this platform to do it. I've taken the hacksaw blades out. We've cut away and cut away. The others woken up in the cell, and they don't know what. The Indian guy's terrified at this.
Is that Mirage?
Mirage, yes.
And are you worried that he's going to inform on you?
I know he's the weakest link. Everybody else would be cool with it. Worried, but cool. But he could start screaming his head off or accidentally have a coughing fit.
Are they potentially going to get tortured and questioned after you've gone? Because
oh, yes, they'll be in trouble.
Okay.
Not life or death trouble, because most of them are foreigners. There's a limit to how far you get. Little Jet I was worried about. But I virtually gave away all my cash that night. I gave Jet my watch and everything like that. So there's nothing I needed. I had 2 ATM cards, so I'd use those. Now, I'd need a rope and a plank to get out of this window. I'd built a bookshelf. That came apart, and that became the plank going out. But I was cutting a bar on this side, and the plank went out next to it, but not facing flat, turning sideways. But it would flop down, wouldn't it? So I'd built another thing which locked that in place, which was made out of wood. It was a footstool, but when you twisted it around and took out a key to it, it became the locking piece. My bed had 100 meters of Army boot factory webbing in it, and that was going to be the rope. Sten is cut through one bar only, one part of one bar. When it's released from its grip on the lower section, it's sprung away with a big sproing.
I can feel my heartbeat increasing right now. I'm right there with you.
Yes, thank you. What that meant, the whole building had shifted sideways, so everything's under tension. I need at least 2 bars out to get out of the place. Clean. It's already after 1 o'clock in the morning. It's nighttime. This is what I didn't take into account in all my testing. Sound. Everything's making a hell of a racket. It wasn't like a violin at night. It was a great scrape as this sound. I'm glued to the crack in the door, looking at the sleeping or dozing guard down the hallway there. That's my function to call what happens. Sten can wear himself out, hacking away at this thing. I need my energy for what's to come. He goes to work on the second one. Mirage is stirring. And I went up to him and I had to say something that would be utterly persuasive to keep him quiet. I grabbed a fistful of his ear and whispered in a kind of hoarse voice, "Mirage, know this with a certainty. The only reason you're not dead now at my hand is because it would upset the others if you were dead in front of them. But believe me, if you make any sound, that will happen quickly." It seemed to work. Because you can imagine if I strangled him, well, anyway, the Hawaiian, for one, would crack up.
Let's not strangle Mirage.
Yeah. Killing's not all it's cracked up to be. I think it's an easy way to go. It's not. I'm just about through the second bar, or second cut of the first bar, up in the top part. I'm getting my things together. I've untangled this rope. I've got a balsa wood bookcase, which I've broken through to get the other.
Are they all
out.
peeping at you as well, the midgets? Are they all watching, or are they pretending to be asleep?
I turned around, and you know they've all worked out. I'm going that night. It's on. Jet, my loyal manservant, little guy, I turned around. You know what? He's dressed in his Sunday best. They all had kind of good clothes. He's got his sandals on. He's even got a little handkerchief in his top pocket to look flash, because he's coming with me.
The midget thinks he's coming.
Yeah, let's not call him a midget. A little guy. It almost brought a tear to my eye. "I with you, my teacher," he said. He called me that for some reason. I was supposed to be teaching him English, but anyway. No, Jet, look. I would have been suicide if I took him with me, the things I had to do. You stay here. Look, take some more. In fact, take all of the money. Here, I said to Sten, take care of this little guy, will you?
Oh, God bless.
They're going to take that first lot of money off him straight away. Yeah. You'll have to come in with the second lot. Scream Embassy, you've seen everything. Don't let any more harm come to them than it's conceivably possible.
Yeah.
And underscore that if I do get away, that it'll be vengeance of God upon any who hurt him, because I'll be out there. And anyway, of course, I could be caught, and the whole thing means nothing. Where am I? Yep. I still can't get out of the damn cell. He's cut halfway through. I look at the time. It's about, 2:20 or something. I haven't got my watch. I've given it to the kid anyway. But I've got one of those old Casio ones, faithful to the end. I said to Stan, stop cutting. Can you bend that barehanded a little bit, 6 inches up, because one's clear? I guess so, only if I stand on it. But this thing had been made, so he had a kind of pilot's position at the window. Fine. So then the bookcase slides out, gets locked into place, so I'm ready to go. He bends it up. I can't get under it. It's just about 5.5 inches. But I know he can hold it temporarily if he wraps his hand in a towel. And I put another towel under the vicious cut stub of the other one, so as I slide in underneath, it won't cut my back. He grabbed a hold of that thing and bent it like it was strangling every guard that had ever given him a hard time in his entire life, I think.
Good old Stan.
A couple of grade school teachers in there and all. So I've stripped down, I've greased myself up even. I've got stuff in a bag, what I think I'll need. I just managed to climb out backwards, and then I'm through. And then he can release his grip a bit, because it's only my legs then, and they'll go either side. I'm through, and I'm holding on the opposite way. I'm now looking in to the cell. Outside is the black night, the Bangkok lights blinking in the distance there. I've got this bag over my shoulder and a big plank 3 floors up, with its own dangers. But suddenly, everything was still and different. The sound was different. I was like a visiting creature who'd landed on the side of the prison, some griffin, winged griffin that had been clutching the thing. And I looked in at them. Means nothing anymore.
Wow.
That's the end of that. Whatever's to come, that is the end of that. Okay, no time for such introspection on it. I've got to get to the ground, so I take the army boot webbing rope, sling it over to this plank, which is a building construction plank. I hand over hand towards the end of it. The reason I'm going right to the tip of this thing, and the reason it had to be wedged out, is because beneath me is a masonry awning that's crumbling away. There's a cell full of trustees underneath that usually play card games all night. If they detect me, they'll blow the whistle. If anything drops on this awning, it'll crumble. I dropped a little stone on there the week before. It just about fell to pieces. I even tried to get the damn thing repaired. Nonetheless, I try a bit of half-witted abseiling. That doesn't work. I was swinging around in a crazy figure of 8 with the bottom of this rope brushing against this crumbling awning. To hell with that, I thought. I let myself just slip through it. I took, I don't know, what have we got, 7 layers? I lost 3 of them sliding down to the ground, but I landed without too much racket. Fine. Managed to flip the top of the rope off. It spaghettied down towards the ground for me. The plank withdrew. Stan stuck his head out a little bit and said, "Send me a postcard." I really did. Anyway, time against me. The Casio's blinking away. It's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, let us resume this after lunch, shall we?
All right.
So this is going to be the dramatic cliffhanger ending of part 3. David has kindly come back and is spending all this time with us. So can you please support him back? In the description box below this video are going to be links to his 2 books, Unforgiving Destiny and Escape, both of which I...
Well, probably annoying to stop there. I really should have part 4 of the interviews with Shaun Attwood lined up and ready to go. But I'm kind of busy doing other things at the moment, but I'll get it done for you soon. That should be quite good. Right, escapes, and here I am heading out the window. I should say something about escapes in general from prison. Why aren't there more of them? Well, people like to live in hope, and often they can feel better about living in hope because it's less work, it's less tiresome, less stressful. A lot of escapes work because simply somebody made the effort to do it. Extraordinarily, so many people that I've met in prisons, they never actually did anything beyond talking about it and making little schemes with their friends in prison and really starting to do things that would actually get them caught, get the whisper out that there was an escape going on. That would bring hands from outside in to stop them. Have I mentioned yet that during a very big escape from a supermax in Melbourne, Australia, back in the 80s, it was 6 guys were going from a section, and I'll find the part where I talk about that and put it up separately. This was very difficult escape to do. You can imagine from a supermax. It was a prison within a prison. It was solid concrete, 2-inch thick glass. The bars had special extra bars within them that prevented easy cutting. What is it? Oh, well, you can imagine an iron bar is the prison bar, but another tube within that, also cylindrical, but one that spins. So when you cut through the outer layer of the rigid bar, you start hitting the spinning bar inside. Yeah, and your blade just turns it around. And they're very expensive, so you won't encounter them too much. So don't hesitate in your escape plans if freedom is your goal and clearing your traduced name is your ultimate aim and you need to escape from prison, or should. That does raise that issue. Is it legal to escape from prison when you are innocent man or woman? Well, no, it's not. But then again, nothing's legal at all, is it? These days, even breathing is regulated. But I won't go into that. I think these things are good for that, those post-lockdown blues you get. You know, when you're supposed to be able to do what you want, but somehow you can't, or you've lost the will to do it? Well, if that's the case, watch part 4 of those interviews, or whatever load of rubbish I've put up myself. I've got something on, what is it? Oh yeah, people judging other people. Now, a lot of that going on, and whether our history means anything at all. So I'm going to leave my hat on, and I'll catch you on the flip side, as they used to say. Bye for now.